What's up, YouTube? One Giant Rebuttal here. We're about to rebut Big Blue Unbiased's Giants vs. Buccaneers recap. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe. With no further ado, let's get into it.
Not very good. Defenses
I skipped about a minute after his intro.
stopping people, and the quarterback play on the other side hasn't been very good. They've been turning the ball over and giving Eli Manning and the offense a ton of extra opportunities to score points. You also got to consider Saquon Barkley had 3 touchdowns of his own today. Odell Beckham made an amazing catch that kind of saved Eli Manning. I mean, I can't believe somebody had the strength to pull that down. But I don't want to sit here and act like someone who is just trying to be anti-Eli Manning. Look, Eli Manning could probably be good enough to win you 6 or 7 games. But at the end of the day, I'm looking out for the Giants. I'm looking out for the long-term outlook in the future of the Giants. Eli Manning may give the Giants 6 or 7 wins. You got to understand, 1-7 to start the season, playing against like Carolina and Atlanta and New Orleans and obviously Philadelphia and Dallas. Even if the teams aren't great, still divisional games, still big games, primetime games. Giants lost all those big games, right? And the one win that they had was against the Texans, who had an 8-game losing streak and onto a 9-game losing streak, right? Obviously, the team's hot now, but they were struggling at the beginning of the year, the Texans. You start to see some of these wins, and people are like getting excited, and it's like, forget about even the context of the teams that they're playing. What are you trying to prove by starting Eli Manning? That's my question, right? Because the Giants.
All right, so I'm going to stop it there.
Giants are playing the Bears to end the season, the Tennessee Titans, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Redskins. You're playing some pretty decent teams, right? There aren't any more Buccaneers games left. There aren't any more. I mean, even the Redskins, I know that Alex Smith is out for the season, but that's still a divisional game on the road, right? And they already have 6 wins. And in order to win the NFC East, I'm going to say they're going to at least need to win 9 games, the Giants, 8 or 9 games, which means they will have to run the table or lose only 1 game. So you play Chicago, you play Tennessee, you play Indianapolis. Those are not easy games. And then you play on the road Philadelphia. This upcoming week, after Philadelphia just got their doors kicked in against New Orleans, you better believe they're going to come back home game with their season on the line, playing hard, and this being a must-win game. Still got Dallas in Week 17, and you still got a road game against the Redskins. So there are no cupcake games the rest of the way. Divisional games, 2 divisional games on the road, and you're playing the Bears, very good team. Obviously played well on Sunday Night Football here. Colts, they can score points. Andrew Luck's really getting back to his old self. And the Tennessee Titans, I mean, they're looking like a legitimate team. Marcus Mariota starting to get healthy with his hand. Obviously, they kicked the Patriots' doors in last week. Those are not going to be easy games. So even if the Giants are really hot, I don't think they're going to run the table and finish 9-7. Even if they play really well, they might finish 4-2. Still going to be 7-9 at the end of the year. So I'm not saying, look, root for your team, and I'm not saying don't root for your team and they should just lose every game. Like I understand you rooting for your team and you want your team to continue to win games because you're not mathematically eliminated. But when I keep saying and harping on Eli Manning, I'm making the point that I'm looking out for the future of the Giants. It's impossible to cut bait with him right now in terms of benching him because of the way he's played. That's why I would have benched him starting the new half year, because not only do you want to develop Kyle Aletta, but you.
All right, so I'm going to stop there. So Vince, you make 3 points. You talk about Kyle Aletta and how he should have started after the bye. You talk about how the Giants have no more cupcakes on their schedule. And you talk about how you have an eye toward the future. The Kyle Aletta point, pretty simple. The arrest showed irresponsibility. I want my quarterback to be the first one in, last one out. Doesn't deserve to start. Maybe Week 17 if the Giants are totally out of it. 2. The no more cupcakes on the schedule. My argument to you is no team on that schedule besides maybe the Bears and the Colts are playing consistently. And I think the Bears are due for a letdown. Now, I'm not trying to make the argument that I think the Giants are going to make the playoffs, but the Giants are going to be in those games. They're going to be able to compete, and they'll have a fighting chance. And then 3, this team already does have an eye toward the future. There's younger players. They're getting more time. You see Grant Haley on the field. They're getting more snaps. Like, cool with the eye to the future stuff. Like, the Giants are definitely in rebuild mode, but there's nothing wrong with winning now, building a winning culture, like you've talked in previous videos, and having an identity going into next year.
You want to make it known to your team that you're ready to move on. I know people are like, oh, if Eli plays well, maybe he could be a good bridge quarterback next year. Maybe he still can win you. At the end of the day, Eli Manning kind of needs the perfect storm around him, the perfect offensive line situation in order for them to be a good team, maybe 8 or 9 wins, right? Eli Manning is a 6 to 7 win quarterback at the moment. If that's what you're promoting, that's why I don't understand the agenda of like Eli Manning fanboys and fans. Like, what's your agenda? That you want him to continue to play and that he's good enough to win you 6 or 7 games? He's clearly not good enough to give you a legitimate and consistent chance at going to the postseason. So what's the point of continue to back him up and say this one stat or he did this one thing? Take away the 2016 Giants, a defense of multiple All-Pros, second in the league in points allowed, you're looking at 7 straight years the Giants would have missed the playoffs, and 6 of those would have been really, I would say maybe 4 to 5 of those would have been a direct result of the offense not playing well. It's 2013, that's 2016, 2017, 2018. So you're talking about at least 4 years where the offense did not perform. And I know that they're starting to play a little bit. They're decent, playing decent right now, but again, threw for 230 yards today, 188 yards last week. It's not like he's torching these defenses, and I understand he completed 17 of his 18 passes, but Saquon Barkley had 3 total touchdowns, and Odell Beckham made a great catch, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers threw 4 interceptions, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have given up the most points per game in the league, and they just fired their defensive coordinator, and they were missing starters on an already bad defense. So I think there needs to be context. And, give Eli time. I understand. Look, if you give him time, there are going to be games where you give him time. But, the thing is, it's not going to be every week. And I think that at this point, Eli Manning, and I'll just be considerate and generous so I don't sound like an Eli hater, although I don't hate Eli Manning. Why would I hate him? Like I said, I grew up with Eli Manning as my favorite player as a little kid. I used to order Super Bowl patches on eBay in like 6th grade, 7th grade, and I used to iron them onto my Eli Manning jersey. Like kids' large Eli Manning jersey. I loved Eli Manning as a little kid, but it's not the point. That's not the argument I'm making. There's no bias. There's no agenda involved when I'm talking about the future of the Giants, and you got to be able to grow. You can't keep clinging on to Eli. Maybe if you give him an offensive line and he could win you 7 or...
All right, so I'm going to stop Vince there. All right, Vince. So basically in this clip, you dog Eli. I mean, let's call it for what it is. Now, I know you mentioned when you were a little kid, you don't hate Eli. And nobody's suggesting you hate Eli. I might have said it, but hate's a strong word. What you do is have tunnel vision. And you blame Eli for everything. And the fact of the matter is, this team is constructed with a 53-man roster. And each and every one of those people are to blame. Now, some have more blame than others. But at the end of the day, it's a 53-man roster. And the Giants have not been consistent. That's why they're a bad team. Jerry Reese is directly to blame. Even now, even though I know Dave Gettleman is replaced a lot, even now Jerry Reese is still to blame. Because you can't ignore 7 years of bad drafts. And you consistently do. And I think you should make a video on Jerry Reese and the 7 years of bad drafts. Because that's why this team is bad. Like, 2016 is an outlier. Like, their defense played over their heads, and it's a total outlier. Nobody on that defense, besides Damian Snacks Harrison, has played up to that level since, including Landon Collins. But again, when it comes to Eli, you have tunnel vision. And I'm not defending Eli's play, but in this league, that's all you need to do is be efficient. Yeah, he didn't torch the Bucs. Yeah, he didn't torch San Francisco 49ers. But That's all you need is efficiency. And what the Giants did do against San Francisco 49ers and did do against the Bucs is get into the end zone. And that's where they have struggled all year. There's a couple games where they really didn't move the ball, but for the most part, the Giants have been able to move the ball. It's punching it into the end zone is where they've struggled. And that's the blame on everybody. That's the blame on Pat Shurmur. That's the blame on Eli Manning. That's the blame on drop passes, which his team has had numerous. Like, stop blaming one person. When you're 30th in sacks, when you have no continuity on the line until week 10 and 11, it's not good. It needs to improve. And they have, and that's why they've won games. Now, I get it. It's against weaker competition, and you want to see it against better competition. But let's worry about the then and now. And right now, they're playing better football. Let's see what they do against the Eagles.
Games. Aren't you tired? If you're a Giants fan, right? Aren't you tired of this act? Like all right, well, we're not going to be consistent, but we're going to get hot at the right time and maybe give ourselves a chance. Like, aren't you done with that? Every year it's like, they start off 0-2 or 0-6, or they're 3-13, or they're 3-7, or they're 6 and like, aren't you getting tired of it? And I know you're gonna be like, offensive line, Jerry Reese didn't do this, and that guy and that head coach, and it's like, but the quarterback hasn't been very consistent either, right? 8 touchdowns through 8 games, and we're starting to see with the offense that the Giants have right now. We're starting to see just how special these guys are the past couple games. Odell Beckham, Sterling Shepard have really performed the last couple games. And that one move that Sterling Shepard made in the middle of the field, I know he was rolled down, but, I mean, he completely juked out a defender. It was pretty impressive. But he's a special talent. He's a special slot receiver, as obviously is Odell Beckham, obviously as is Saquon Barkley. And that just goes to show why Eli was receiving so much heat. You got all these players who were just so damn good, even Evan Ingram. He's showing up here and there in big spots the last couple of weeks. He has so many good players to work with. So it was unacceptable for him to throw 8 touchdowns in the first 8 games and for the offense to be as mediocre as it was. And I know people are like, oh, well, they lost all these games by, like, touchdown or less, people. If you watch the games, they did not have control of any game except for the Houston Texan game. I'm talking about control where they had a lead most of the game, and even if they lost it or whatever, it was, they lost on a last-second thing, but they had control most of the game. Even the games that are close, they're losing. I mean, the Saints game, right? People are like, oh, a couple of calls here and there, and they could have won. No, it was 26-10 late in the fourth quarter. The Giants got their garbage time touchdown.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. You're darn right I'm tired, Vince. I'm tired of this team losing. But what I'm also tired of is you having tunnel vision. I get quarterback is the most important position on the field, but it's not the only position on the field. A roster is constructed of 53 other members, and I get that I'm repeating myself, but you consistently laugh off Jerry Reese's 7 years of bad drafts. You consistently laugh off offensive line play. And maybe laughing off is a little harsh, but all these things go together. And when you don't have good quarterback play, you don't have consistent offensive line play, you don't have great depth, you're not getting after the quarterback like you should, you're not going to be a good team. And the Giants haven't been consistent for a long time. And that's all I want you to do is be more objective about this team as a whole. Now, I get you've touched on Marin, I get you've touched on Gettleman, but as a whole, this video, you've dogged Eli left and right, and you'll touch on other things, and you have touched on other things. But for the most part, you keep pointing back to Eli. And there's 53 other members on this roster.
touchdown. The Saints actually got a garbage time touchdown of their own. The same thing with the Panthers game. They were up by 9. They were down by 9 or 10 points in the fourth quarter. They had a late game surge that made it close, and they took the lead, and they gave obviously the game-winning field goal, the 60-plus yard field goal. But, you look at these games, even the Atlanta game, you watch that game, the score looks close at the end, but the Giants scored a garbage time touchdown in the final minute of the game. The Giants don't have control of many games. And I know people are like, oh, well, they're this close. Well, it's one thing if you're this close, 1 or 2 times. It's another thing if you're this close 6 or 7 times and you're not getting it done. It just means that you're not a good enough team, especially at the quarterback position. You can stick up for Eli Manning. That's fine. And you could say Eli Manning just needs an offensive line. That's fine. But he needs almost everything around him to be perfect in order to be a good quarterback. At the end of the day, the way that he plays is not going to be consistent in terms of winning 10 games every year, right? It's not going to be consistent winning 10 games every year. And that's why I don't care even if he finishes the season strong, it's not about me being anti-Eli, but I'd move on because you got to grow as a franchise. You got to be willing to stop clinging to Eli, even though you think, baby, he can win you 6 games, be bridge quarterback. No, it's time. You got to move on. You got to see what else you got. You got to see other options. You got to see different people, right? It's like a relationship where you have your ups and your downs, and after a while of years and years of ups and downs, it's like, maybe you just got to see different people, and it's not going to work out. That's the thing with Eli. So let me go on to Pat Shurmur. Pat Shurmur, I'm very impressed with Pat Shurmur and his ability to kind of start molding and creating this Giants culture that is not only like a new style of coaching, which if you notice with him, he's like, he'll always high-five his guys, and his guys kind of come up to him and give him a hug. Like, you can see his guys really respect him and like him, but at the same time, he has a certain accountability and a certain stern way of going about things. And I think that's something that Ben McAdoo struggled with in terms of Ben McAdoo had this strategy very similar to like what Pete Carroll has with the Seahawks. Or had with the Seahawks, and it's kind of faded away, or maybe it's still there. I'm not really sure, but they got a lot of young players who aren't as vocal as the other players that were there, the Legion of Boom or whatever. But go back to 2016 with Ben McAdoo. Ben McAdoo let everybody do whatever they wanted, dance parties, pregame, they had all these dance routines and the Miami boat, and it was just like Odell and all these guys did whatever they want. Odell said and did whatever he want. Never got, Ben McAdoo in 2017 actually got in his face in a game against the Eagles when he did the peeing touchdown thing. He started yelling at the fans. But for the most part, Ben McAdoo in 2016, he kind of just let all those guys, those big personalities on the Giants, just do whatever they wanted. And that's just, I remember actually writing an article, like Ben McAdoo brought a swag to the Giants, like, hey, boys, you do what you got to do, right? And that works. But at the same time, it's very hit or miss. As you saw last year, DRC suspended, runs out on the coach, and Eli Apple, all this drama, and Landon Collins hates Eli Apple. When you let players just like do whatever they want, you might have a year like 2016 where you win 11 games and all pros and everybody's fun and happy, dance parties and boat trips and do whatever you want. And the Green Bay game, everyone's shirtless before and it's like negative 40 degrees and he's wearing a Lawrence Taylor jersey, OBJ, and everything's cool, we're having fun. But when things are bad, things get bad, and that's what happened with the Seahawks. Richard Sherman outspoken, Michael Bennett outspoken, Earl Thomas outspoken, you had all these Marshawn Lynch outspoken. And when you're doing well and you allow them to do it and they're playing well, it's great. But when it's not, it's not. Marshawn Lynch retires. You got to trade Richard. The Seahawks are like, can we please get rid of Richard Sherman as fast as possible? They were trying to trade him. Eventually, I believe he got cut. They get rid of Richard Sherman. Earl Thomas is giving the middle finger and saying how he wants to play for the Cowboys over the past like 2 or 3 years. And like when it's great, you're winning, going to the Super Bowl. And when it's bad, you got people giving the middle finger to your team, which Earl Thomas did after he got hurt. Richard Sherman, very outspoken. Michael Bennett, very outspoken. Marshawn Lynch just retires and then comes back. When you allow and Cam Chancellor, I know he's kind of hurt, but like retired and don't know what's going on with him. When you allow so much player empowerment, I think that's the perfect word. Going to have your ups, but your downs are going to be really down, and there's going to be a lot of drama. I like what Pat Shurmur has going because there's a certain accountability where, okay, you can kind of do what you want, but there's going to be consequences if you do something wrong, and we're going to hold you accountable. You're not just going to do whatever you want. And it's interesting when Odell made his comments on ESPN, I supported his comments. I think that he was right, and I think he needed to inject an energy in the team. But I understand Pat Shurmur's perspective, and he fined him. And I think that's a great message to send, that it doesn't matter if you're Odell Beckham or if you're Curtis Riley. If we think that you're doing something detrimental to the team, we will hold you accountable and we will fine you or we will penalize you. And I think that's the perfect message to send. Still flexibility. He's still respected. He seems like the guys still like him. I get a good vibe with him in terms of what I've seen on the sidelines with some of the players. But at the same time, if you screw up, accountability. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're Odell. It doesn't matter if you're whoever else. BJ Hill. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're the most popular, if you're not the most popular, it does not matter. And I'll also say this about Pat Shurmur. He's an offensive-minded head coach, and his offensive weapons have been outstanding this year. Odell Beckham on pace for 100 catches, 1,500 yards. Sterling Shepard on pace for a career year. Saquon Barkley on pace for 100 receptions on 1,000 yards. They've all performed. I honestly think if Eli Manning had performed better in the first 8 games, his offense, Pat Shurmur's offense, would be close to unstoppable. He has so many pieces. And I think once he gets his quarterback to mold, it should be interesting. Let me move on to...
All right, so I'm going to pause it there. Vince, now here's where I'm going to give you a compliment. What you had to say about Shurmur, what you had to say about the position players, the people you pointed out. I mean, great job. You know, you made a lot of strong points right there.
To the move on to the third topic, draft position. And like I said, you know, it's tough to just like purposely tank, but I don't understand the point the Giants were trying to prove when they continue to play Eli. Like I said, in the moment, it's cute. Like, oh, maybe the Giants, they're not mathematically eliminated. The NFC East is wide open. Maybe they can make a run here. But, like, again, you got to consider the schedule that they have. It's going to be tough to win the next 6 straight games against, you know, going on the road to Philadelphia and Washington and playing Chicago and playing Indianapolis, Tennessee, and Dallas. Like, those are not easy games to win, especially 3 divisional games. You never know what happens in divisional games. It could go either way, but it's tough to win. It's going to be tough to win all 3 of those games. And the Giants basically have to win out in order to give themselves a real shot at winning the NFC East. So, you know, my point is, while you're rooting for the team and you're saying this or that, you got to have a broader aspect in terms of this season really is not going to mean anything in the long run. And that's what I said last year when they benched Eli Manning. People were like, oh, it's so disrespectful. I go, no, it's not disrespectful. They need to see what they have in the future with Davis Webb. And I know Geno Smith started that one game, but they were going to transition into Davis Webb. You didn't give him a shot. Everybody rioted and was so pissed off. They fired McAdoo midseason, which, again, was a bad move midseason because Steve Spagnuolo came in, and Steve Spagnuolo wanted to win and earn himself an interview to be a head coach. So he played Eli Manning instead of playing the young player in Davis Webb and giving him time, which he should have. When you're 2-9, when I think Eli Manning's bench was 2-9, the team was, your season's over, right? Like you're done. Your team is finished. So stop trying to play the we're going to win every game and play hard. Like I get it, that's a cute thing to say, but you have a young third-round rookie quarterback who you could give 2 or 3 or 4 games here at the end of the season and see what you got in him. Not saying he's going to be the future of the franchise, but you can see what you got in him. I mean, it's a decently high pick. It's not like he's a 7th-round pick. He wasn't Rhett Bomar, if anybody remembers that name, former Sam Houston State quarterback that the Giants drafted years ago. I believe the 2009 draft or 2008 draft. He wasn't Sam Bomar or Andre Woodson, the quarterback. I think it was either Kentucky or Kansas State or one of those schools, or Kansas was Andre Woodson. Those are your late-round flyer quarterbacks. Davis Webb was the 3rd-round pick, and Kyle Lett is a 4th-round pick. There's still solid draft choices, even though quarterbacks get overdrafted. Still solid draft choices. The Giants, don't screw this up again. Stop it with the clinging to Eli. Oh, he's playing decent. We can't bench him now. If he plays poorly this week against Philadelphia, you have an excuse and you got to make it happen. It's not me being anti-Eli. But we've seen this act so many times, especially with the 2013 Giants. 0-6, and then they beat up on some bad teams in the end, and it looks better than it really was. They were not a good team. They finished 7-9, but they weren't a good team. So people have to understand. I'm not hating Eli. I'm not hating on Eli. If he wants to go somewhere else on Denver, Jacksonville, and win 6 or 7 games, go do it. But, you know, that's really who he is right now as a quarterback. He's a 6 or 7 win quarterback. And not only that, but he's not a guy that's going to give you a legitimate chance year after year to consistently compete for the playoffs. And right now, you look at some teams that need a quarterback. Oakland, Denver, Miami, Washington, Jacksonville, Tampa. And I know you're thinking, whoa, Washington, they got Alex Smith. Ooh, Miami, what? They got Ryan Tannehill. But look what the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes. They had Alex Smith and they traded up and they drafted Pat Mahomes because he was more of a project. He wasn't a guy that was going to step in and play right away. Will Grier, Daniel Jones could be guys that aren't going to step in and play right away. Maybe Dwayne Haskins. Those aren't guys that are going to step in and play right away. But maybe a Jay Gruden wants to say, we'll go another year or two with Alex Smith. I'll groom, Will Grier. He'll play in 2020. And then we got our guy for the next 10 years. Same could be said for, who did I just mention? Miami with Adam Gase. They could say, we're going to take Daniel Jones, but we're going to play Ryan Tannehill, for 2019. But Daniel Jones, he'll be getting ready, and he'll be a quarterback for the future, and we'll get him ready. So stop saying like, oh, well, the Giants not going to be a lot of teams competition for Justin Herbert. Well, you see the fight with John Gruden and Derek Carr on the sidelines today? Would you be surprised if Oakland took Justin Herbert number one? Or if they said, you know what, Giants, you want Justin Herbert that bad, right? You got the 10th pick because you won 6 games. Proud that you played Eli Manning. Good job, Giants. You played Eli Manning, and you got your wish, fanboys. You played your guy. You won 6, 7 games. And I got the 10th, 11th, or 12th, 13th pick, and I got to give up another first-round pick next year and a second-round pick this year, maybe an Evan Ingram or Sterling Shepard in order to move up to that 1 spot or 2 spot or whatever to get your franchise quarterback. It's tough because I'm not saying purposely tank, but what are you trying to prove by playing Eli Manning? Play Kyle Aletta and move for the future and grow. Eli Manning is not going to be your long-term quarterback, even if he shows glimpses here and there against really bad teams.
All right, so I'm going to pause it there. So, Vince, I'm assuming you heard Dave Gettleman say, if you don't pick the right quarterback, you set your franchise back 5 years. And I truly believe in that. Because I've lived through Clint Graham. I lived through Dave Brown. I lived through Danny Cannell. Okay? And these are quarterbacks either Giants picked up or drafted. Or journeymen that were on the team. And there was years where they were lost. I mean, they were competitive, but they weren't very good. They had more of a defensive identity then. Now, I know you're excited to see Kyle Aletta. And if they don't start Kyle Aletta, you feel like they're making the same mistake they did last year. And I'll argue against that. And here's why. And this played out in the media, and there's reports after McAdoo left that suggested McAdoo wasn't even prepping for Davis Webb to start at all. And that's why this team and the fan base revolted. Because they started Geno Smith, and we knew what we had in Geno. Had they started Davis, I don't think you would have had the problem you did. And you would have, the argument you made would have been fine. But they weren't even prepping Davis Webb to start. And yes, when Spagnuolo took over, he was trying to win games. But this regime is trying to put the stamp on this team. They're trying to build an identity. So in the next year, the Giants can be competitive or more competitive. And I don't believe the Giants will take a QB in this draft, I think. But they're also going to go get a journeyman quarterback. And they're going to hold a good old-fashioned QB competition and let that play out. And they'll start the QB that will give them the best chance to win. Nobody believes, and if anybody does, that Eli Manning should come back next year, they're punch drunk. So please stop making that point, because I don't think anybody believes that. Even the biggest Eli Manning lover doesn't believe that Eli Manning is going to be the quarterback for this team next year. I'll be ending the video here. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. I'll be leaving a link to Vince's channel in the description, Big Blue Unbiased. And I believe he also has a website. If you're curious about the next 2 minutes and 10 seconds that he talks, also, again, check out his channel. This is One Giant Rebuttal signing off, and go Big Blue.